The Barton nuclear plant that they paid $35 million for that never got off the ground. Now, this is for plans, land, and everything else. Now, this particular Barton nuclear plant that they had planned to build cost the ratepayers to the $7 million a year for this mismanagement.
Mrs. L, I understand that you plan to do traveling and also get your book out for sale. How far along are you with your book?
I would say that I'm probably half through. I did more while I was in jail, but I enjoyed being out here more. You better believe it was worth it. And I also need some, and will get some professional help, but I've got a lot of the work already done, and I'm very excited about it.
When can we expect to see it on the bookshelves?
I would say no sooner than maybe 9 months, because, well, I'm new at this and I don't know how long it takes with publishing, that kind of thing, but I would say maybe 9 months. Mm-hmm. Now, I could be wrong because I'm not experienced in the length of time that takes, but I hope so.
Very good. Let me ask you, your critics have criticized you for serving your time like you have here at this place. What do you have to say to the folks that say that you should serve your time like anybody else who is convicted of crime?
Well, first of all, if I had committed a crime, it would be different. I did not. And next, it's kind of interesting to see how a lot of these other politicians were handled. As a matter of fact, I understand the mayor of Glencoe was charged with the same thing, was given a $5,000 fine, and did not even lose his job. So I think the people are smart enough, the people out in the country at the crossroads, from the response I've gotten, they see through it. Of course, the critics are very upset because they would like to break my spirit. Of course, they found out they can't do it. They certainly would criticize that because they're the reason I'm here, you know. So the judge had the alternative of, he could have given me a fine, and I wouldn't have even had to go to jail at all. So it was strictly left up to the judge, and he is the one who has the authority. He had all the information. So the critics are not in the judge's place, so I think they should wait until they have all the facts before they're so vocal.
So you don't feel like that you've got preferential treatment over others?
No, as a matter of fact, I think because of who I am, they had to bend over backwards the other way.
Perhaps the most controversial bill Montgomery County's delegation is handling is a bingo law. Introduced in the House by Charles Langford, the package of 2 bills sailed through to the Senate, where Bishop Barron stopped them in the Senate Local Legislation Committee and made what he said are some needed clarifications. Barron's version makes it clear that only non-profit organizations can be licensed to operate bingo games. The 2 bills go back to the House Tuesday, where Montgomery's 6 representatives are faced with accepting the changes, because Barron says he won't compromise. If the House members don't accept the changes, the bills could die. One other bill introduced by Langford in the House and slightly changed by Barron in the Senate would create another circuit judgeship in Montgomery County. Barron says he expects the House members to accept his change, specifying a family court judge. There are 4 other bills that would increase the salary of 4 county elected officials, the tax collector, tax assessor, probate judge, and sheriff, and increase the salary for the city council members and the mayor. But again, Barron wants to tack on what he considers 2 important changes. The city council mayor pay raises would only reflect the cost of living increases, and the increases to the county elected officials wouldn't be effective until the next term of office. If Barron does make the changes and passes them through the Senate with the backing of the other 2 local senators, he says the House House again will have to accept them or let the bills die. With what few legislative days are left, those decisions will have to be made next week. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
Organized crime. It was the things they did to get the conviction that was unfair. Oh, one thing, I felt about that like I would anything else that I felt I should do. You know, like going to jail. Do this on the worst ones. I get the shampoo down here.
Solar Energy Director Bruce Novell says the best time to take advantage of the sun's rays to heat your home is from December to October. Novell says to determine if your house can store natural energy, take a picture of the structure facing north and then notice the reflection of the sun's rays. Novell says also notice the trees in your yard, in your neighbor's yard, and any buildings surrounding the house. He says neither the trees nor buildings should block out any valuable solar energy. Novell says several energy devices can be used for the home. One is the Sun Viewer, an inexpensive solar device that can be homemade, which determines the reflection of the sun's rays. And if you're very serious about using solar energy, you can buy a more expensive device, the Solar Pathfinder. Novell says solar energy will be the power source of the future.
It's very practical and possible for water heating and heating, even in Alabama, particularly against electricity. Gas is still pretty inexpensive, but there are applications like water heating and heating where solar, particularly passive solar, can be very attractive, economical, and practical.
Novell says nearly every home can use solar energy. He says it's a good idea, especially since it's free. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
This year they're kind of small. We put some in the freezer to make cobblers with.
In that area, you know, it really gets picked over fast. Kids go through it and just eat a few too.
You know, I look forward to this race. After winning the last race up here, we come back with a good combination for the racetrack. The car is working awful well and the motor's performing good, so I'm ready to go.
Daryl Waltrip's talking about the Tennessee gang. You, a member of the Alabama gang, you guys got to stick up for us.
Well, I'm not going to slack off any. If they get anything, they're going to have to work for it.
Well, of course, it's a horsepower racetrack more than anything. When you come here, if you're not running when you unload the car off a truck, there's just not a whole lot you can do about it. If you don't do your homework before you get here, you can work till you're blue in the face, and you're just not going to make that much of an improvement. Every time I've been here and won or run very well, I just backed the car off of the truck and went out and it was fast right from the start. Every time I've been here and really had to fight for every 10th to get the car to run fast, you usually end up behind, and we're a little bit behind this time.
I was going to ask you, how'd you come off the
We didn't come off the truck so good.
4 wins this year. You have to be happy about that.
Real tickled with the races that we've won. Like to have finished the others that we haven't won. We either seem to finish first or last. We haven't been able to get in between yet. As soon as we can get a little bit more consistency where when we don't win, we at least finish in the top 3 or 4, then we'll start to close the gap on Allison for the Winston Cup point championship, and that's what we really want to try to do from here on out.
Produce farmer Ricky Wright says peaches, tomatoes, and corn will be the bumper crops this year, and he expects much of the overall spring produce to do equally as well. Wright says vegetable and fruit prices should be about the same this spring as last, though he says customers may have to pay a little more for tomatoes and oranges. He says the Florida citrus crop was heavily damaged due to the unusually cold winter, but he says a good portion was saved. Wright says early spring planting was favorable this year as Mother Nature cooperated with the farmers, but Wright says she could start sending some more rain. Wright says produce continues to come in bountifully every day from throughout South Alabama and Florida.
We've been open about 2 weeks here, but you can get about anything you want now because stuff is starting to come out of Georgia, string beans, pole beans, and all kinds of stuff like that's coming up now. It won't be long. You can get about anything you want now.
Good news for watermelon lovers. Wright says the juicy red fruit should be on the produce stand within the next few weeks. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
It's hard to get that hill up there. It's hard to get uphill. And it's fun coming down the hill on the other side.
Chairman right there. 100,000 race fans saw the 40 starters take the green flag for what promised to be a super fast Winston 500. But it never happened. A 5-car wreck occurred on the second lap, taking out several top drivers, including Richard Petty, whose Winston 500 jinx continues.
We went into the third corner, and 33 come out of the pack, running straight into the wall. And when he did, then everybody tried to get stopped, and everybody started hitting each other. There wasn't nothing we could do about it. We just kept running into each other, and we kept spinning and knocked out 5 or 6 cars.
Then on the 15th lap, Ricky Newsom spun out, causing Bobby Allison and a couple of others to run together. Allison pitted with a cracked windshield and dragging his back bumper. But he was able to get racing again under the long caution. In fact, the caution was out for most of the first 40 laps because of the debris left on the track by the 2 wrecks. Bobby Allison avoided defeat one more time later in the race, an unscheduled pit stop for tire problems, but then back on the track, he doggedly stayed in front of the leader, Buddy Baker, to keep from going a lap down. Finally, the caution flag he was waiting for came out with about 20 laps to go, and he was able to make up the distance he'd lost. The final few laps were a thrilling race to the wire, with Allison, Buddy Baker, and Darrell Waldrop in the thick of it. Coming down to the final turn for home, Allison dropped low, Baker moved high to go around, but Waldrop dropped in behind Allison, pushing him just enough to send him across the finish line by about 2 or 3 car lengths. It may have been Bobby Allison's finest ride.
More popular victory.
Well, it's here at home, and I'm just real happy. Car ran so good all day. We had a lot of problems. We got in that wreck early. The windshield got busted. The steering wheel was around crossways. I just, guys worked on the car when I come in and got it real fixed up for me, and the tire wear was good, and, just everything worked okay, and we won the race.
The bill prohibits companies who own oil refineries from opening retail gas stations in Alabama. Childersburg Senator John Teague says he sponsored the bill because he thinks it's an unfair advantage for large oil companies to be able to sell gas at lower prices than gas stations who have to pay a middleman. Teague says large companies charge lower rates until they put the small gas station owners out of business, and then they turn around and charge their customers any price they want. But Bishop Barron claims the bill wouldn't affect service stations alone. He says many convenience stores that sell gasoline are owned by oil companies, even though they don't make most of their money from gas sales. What's more, Barron says he can't think of any situations where limiting competition has saved consumers money. Barron offered several amendments that would exclude convenience stores from the provision, but they failed. The Senate finally passed the bill 22-4. It's now up to the House of Representatives to deal with the bill in the remaining 4 days of this legislative session. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
They waved signs, sang songs, and threw masks and medicine on the steps of the Labor Department building at the foot of Capitol Hill. They came to protest the administration's decision to review the standards the Carter administration proposed to implement the 1978 Brown lung law.
The thing of it is, if they pull it back now, we're talking about another 3 years. So we've been 3 years now getting to where we've got it. If they pull it back and they start over again, if it's starting over again, it will take us 3 more years to get where we're going.
What difference would it mean to your people if those standards don't go into effect?
Well, it means they're going to be suffering like I am with brown lung. There's no cure for it, and it's just daily oxygen and very little activities.
Then they went across the street for a rally and speeches from labor leaders. Secretary Ray Donovan is out of town. The head of OSHA offered to meet with a small group, but not all of them, so there was no meeting. But they didn't feel one was necessary to make the day a success.
We hoping with the news media and all that we can make people aware is just how important it really is.
The administration's decision to review the Brown lung standards does not change the fact that the Supreme Court is also reviewing the industry suit against them. Both sides are waiting to see whether the court rules on the issue or tosses the case back in light of the new administration's position. Don Brownlee, WSFA TV News, Washington.
Museum representatives are asking the commission to extend that deadline if they are to move. They'd also like reimbursement of money they've spent on restoring the museum. But Commissioner Bill Joseph offered a possible alternative for the museum staff, move them upstairs to the second floor and put the law library on the main floor where the museum is now. Joseph says the commission must move the library by this summer because it needs more space. Flag Museum representatives agreed with that idea, saying they prefer having a foot in the door to being out on the curb. Museum officials say they are aware of the heat upstairs during the summer, but they're more concerned about security. Judge Perry Hooper, who's in charge of the law library, also favored the floor swap. In the meantime, Commissioner Joseph told the museum representatives to explore all possibilities while Flag Museum officials discuss the proposal with their board members. Kim Davis, WSFA, TV News.
State government. I have a couple of things I'd like to say about that. When I was hired, the governor told me that he says, Caroline, don't let anybody put anything on you because you don't owe anybody anything. I expect you to...
Just like this on the table on the way out. Those of you who have public exposure in your businesses, please pick up.
The Kiwanis Club meets on Monday. The Rotary Club meets on... Yes, Huntsville Space and Rocket Center is the world's largest space museum. And because of this, and because the shuttle was fantastic, and it made me so very proud because I know the shuttle idea and all started in Alabama. It was researched here, tested here. In fact, Huntsville has, Marshall Space and Rocket Center has the largest container of water. I think it holds about 1 million gallons where the astronauts get into this water to practice weightlessness and working with tools in that situation. Right here, if you haven't seen it, I do hope that you'll make an opportunity to go see it.
I, Dale Ritchie, will support and defend the Constitution.
Will support and defend the Constitution
of the United States.
Standing. An officer does not receive the official.
Has honored my request by appointing
In Fort Campbell, Kentucky, jumping out of airplanes for a living. There's much I did not know about him. He was a student at Central Alabama Academy. Dale is a confidence in all personnel and demonstrated an ability to make sound.
Introduce a man because I think any ceremony like
to the ASCS across the hall. I'm glad to see you, Guy. Hope you'll be here soon. That same tact. And taking the time to share with us this moment. Emery, I don't know about you now. You talk an awful lot. It's been pretty tough to follow and act like you. But we'll try. Mike, really say some
Ritchie says most of the problems facing farmers hinge on inflation. He says the president's economic package will control inflation and therefore help farmers tremendously. President Reagan has proposed financial cuts in a number of programs.
I don't anticipate any cuts of a major nature in the near future. I think we'll be able to continue pretty much like we're operating at this point in time.
The Farmers Home Administration also gives technical and financial assistance to people in rural communities to increase economic development and raise their standard of living. As for those programs, Ritchie says he foresees no new programs and a general shift of emphasis. Ritchie says he wants to continue rural construction of water development and sewer plants and to promote industry and employment in underdeveloped areas. He says approximately 15 to 20% of the people in the state still get their water from wells and says the best thing the government can do is to provide a potable water system for those people. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
We went into the third corner and 33 come out of the pack, running straight into the wall. And when he did, then everybody tried to get stopped and everybody started hitting each other. Wasn't nothing we could do about it. We just kept running into each other and we kept spinning and knocked out 5 or 6 cars.
cars sit was a heck of a race today. 5 cars, 6 cars battling all the time there. The folks can't ask for a much better race than that.
The first victory in a downsized car, Bobby. Is that something special?
Well, we've had a lot of problems this year, and I'm glad to win.
Bobby, you've had some trouble with your sponsorship each year. You think it's going to change things after winning this big one right here?
Oh, we're looking forward to going with some people, and Jim Stacy and his group are with us today, and they're mighty nice folks, and we've been talking to some other people. Our sponsor earlier this year, they tried hard. They had some organizational problems, and they're gone, but we enjoyed being with them, and whatever help we could have been to them, and whoever we get on the car from here on, I hope we're able to do them some good.
And the other is our guest speaker this evening. In fact, these folks used to eat scrawny line.
Historically, after the opportunity, it's so painful for me to see a 17 or an 18-year-old come to Georgia Tech and to sit in my office. And I'm going to tell you something about coaching. And you high school coaches, my hat's off to you. I love you and I appreciate you. There is no more important group of men in our country than the high school coaches. There is none. Because the kids that refuse to listen in the classroom will listen to you. I don't know why, but they will. I did. I had a great high school coach. I thought he was the meanest, ugliest, toughest man that ever lived. But by golly, he made me grow up and do some things that I didn't think I could do.
Bob, we're very proud of you, and we know you exemplify all that this award stands for. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
I think I just had about 7 heart attacks just then. I'm not too good of a speaker, so I don't know how long this is going to be, but I want to start out by thanking Mr. Gross and Mr. McKinney for working for me toward this award. And I know if they got me up here, I had to do a heck of a job, so I want to thank my parents for never letting me down. They've offered me their guidance all my life, and for the last 18 years, they've made me about as happy as possible. And especially for my coaches and
a wonderful time. We started about 6 o'clock this morning, and we had a ball, and we're on a real high.
You ready?
Move home and we'll pray this prayer at other times, but let's do it now, shall we? I think we're just about ready.
Isn't that a beautiful voice coming from way up there?
Thank you very much.
Single mile. This way. To the right.
Geneva County Representative Gene Daniels and Montgomery County's Bob McKee told the House members that the bill would make one important change. It would restructure the PSC such that it would be consumer-oriented. Or in other words, the Commission would argue against all rate increase requests as opposed to the current method in which the PSC acts as a nonpartisan mediator. Although House Speaker Pro Tem Rick Manley warned the members that the bill was far-reaching, perhaps more than they realized, the House overwhelmingly approved the bill and sent it on to the Senate. One other major bill the House passed on to the governor for signature is what's known as the Current Use Property Tax Bill. Sponsors of the bill say it will help negate a property tax increase ordered by Governor James. Opponents claim it will only provide tax breaks for large landowners. The House also voted against a bill that would have reduced unemployment benefits, and the House Montgomery County delegation voted against a Senate version of 2 bills, one creating a bingo law and 2 creating another judgeship in the county. The group of local bills will go to a conference committee where the House and Senate members will try and reach compromises. The major problem with the bingo bill involves who can be licensed. The difference on the judgeship bill relates to when the judgeship will be created, immediately and appointed by the governor, or in 1983 following the election of a judge for the seat. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News in the House of Representatives.
We've got a deadline too, and if we don't have these reconstruction bills, then we're going to have to face this summer heat. And we're going to face people who will not be able to buy the kind of groceries they need to put on their tables. because they're going to have to pay these exorbitant bills, or they're going to have to take the chance of just burning up all summer long or being cold all winter long. Right now, Senator Kirkland, Rio Kirkland, I'd like for him to speak with
The new Speakers Bureau consists of school teachers, principals, superintendents, and parents. Creel says they plan to cover every state crossroads, speaking out on several issues facing what he calls the preservation of quality education in Alabama.
Some of these issues are supporting the continuation of earmarking and opposing the inclusion of two-year post-secondary institutions in the reorganization on the Commission of Higher Education. The State Board of Education on 2 different occasions voted unanimously supporting earmarking.
Creel says calling the legislature in a special session to unearmark tax monies in the Special Educational Trust Fund is a waste of taxpayers' money necessary to solving the real problems facing public education. Creel says the speakers group also plans to address the major issues directly affecting Alabama school children, including the teenage pregnancy and drug problem, violence and the breakdown of discipline in classrooms, crime in neighborhoods, proration, and the establishment of a remedial program for slow learners in grades K through 6. He says there needs to be a stronger linkage between the state's 4- and 2-year schools to provide a quality higher education for all Alabama students. Kim Davis, WSFA, TV News.
Following 3 days of debate in the House, the bill came to the Senate and called for the creation of a new commission on post-secondary education. The commission would have the power to review courses offered at 2- and 4-year colleges, excluding technical schools. Several junior college presidents and State Board of Education members spoke against the bill, saying the state board should retain control of junior college courses. One board member said the bill suggests a vote of no confidence in the Board of Education. But the bill's supporters claimed it would bring coordination to higher education and would bring equal treatment to 2- and 4-year institutions. The hearing became nasty when Enterprise State Junior College President Ab Forrester accused the legislature of constructing the bill in secret meetings. Senator Dewey White, in turn, accused Forrester of spending hours lobbying legislators but not submitting a lobbyist's financial statement to the Ethics Commission. As the committee prepared to vote, Selma Senator Earl Goodwin said that he had received a lot of pressure on the bill, including threats from the administration. He wouldn't reveal the nature of the threats, but the governor's press secretary issued a statement that the governor has never threatened anyone. Finally, a vote was taken and the bill died, 5 votes to 4. It was a heavy blow to the governor, who had said in an earlier news conference that if the vote were unfavorable, it would show that at least some senators are not thinking of the public interest. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
And I think if they're going to run on that ticket.
Creel says there are several issues that need addressing in order to ensure a quality education in Alabama schools, and he and the new Speakers Bureau, consisting of school teachers, principals, superintendents, and parents, intend to cover the entire state speaking out on these issues.
Some of these issues are supporting the continuation of earmarking and opposing the inclusion of 2-year post-secondary institutions in the reorganization on the Commission of Higher Education.
Creel says some of the major issues directly affecting Alabama school children will also be addressed, among them the teenage pregnancy and drug problem, violence and the breakdown of discipline in classrooms, crime in neighborhoods, proration, and the establishment of a remedial program for slow learners in grades K through 6. Creel says there needs to be a stronger bond between Alabama 4- and 2-year schools, which will provide for quality higher education for all students. Kim Davis, WSFA, TV News.
Conceptual terms. Money is now on the plate. The appreciation of whatever expenditures were made from strictly an economic or a financial point of view.
The report by May 5th, which is today, I think this committee is planning
$449 million.
I don't see any real need to jump forward with any kind of locked-in position when
that's the bill back up until that money was actually there, that was taken out for mental health and prisons. I think those are 2 critical needs of the state without any question. They've got to be addressed, and if it takes some of the principle, I think we can do it.
There's been a lot of rhetoric about it, saying that it's not fair to this or unfair to that. And I think if you will read the bill, you will find it to be totally untrue. Well, I haven't decided. The Senate can make a gallant effort and salvage it, or they can torpedo it, or have it killed in any number of ways, lurking in the shadows of the deep, and you'll never know from whence the killer shark could emerge. The old Republican, they said this. When you say call a roll, let me say I believe that these issues, if understood by the public and what they mean in dollars to the public, are plenty to get the public's attention.
The presentation is to be made by our President, Dr. George Bradford.
Bob,
When I arrived at the Green Bay Packers in 1965 as a rookie, and as you football fans know, a rookie in the National Football League is a first-year man for you ladies, and that's the lowest form of human life. And you talking about stark terror, walk into Vince Lombardi's camp as a 20th round draft choice when there ain't but 20 rounds. The first guy to walk up to me was a fellow named Bart Starr, who was such a superstar you couldn't even believe it. And you know what he said to me? He said, "Bill, I don't know what your religious preference is, but we have a real fine preacher down at the Methodist Church, and my wife and I'd like to pick you up Sunday morning and take you to church with us," which they did. And a friendship was born that day that will live as long as I live.
The redistricting plan is required by law as a result of final figures from the 1980 census and the 1979 annexation. In that annexation, the city took in 20,000 new residents who will go without official council representation until the new district boundaries are set. The final census figures show a 34% increase in the city's population over the past 10 years. The city currently has 9 districts, and the law requires that each one have basically the same number of constituents, so the mayor's plan will expand each of the districts proportionately.
Mayor Farmer wouldn't reveal any specifics about his plan because he says he wants the council to be the first to see it, but says after his presentation he'll ask the council to table the measure for 30 days. By law, the council has 6 months to act on the measure. If no action is taken, it becomes law. Mayor Farmer says he feels 30 days is a reasonable amount of time for the council to act and will soon provide council representation for those living in the newly annexed areas. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
The state had contended that Strickland knew he was going to sell his business, but continued taking money from prospective patients and advertising, knowing that he couldn't follow through on services he promised, therefore defrauding the public. But the evidence in court didn't substantiate that contention. Defense attorneys said there was no intent on Strickland's part to deceive the public because in the sale agreement with Alabama Health and Weight Clinic, NutriMedic members would be allowed to continue their program at that clinic. In fact, some of the former patients of NutriMedic testified they went to Alabama Health and Weight, finished their program, and were satisfied. The charges were dropped in return for $5,000 that the state was suing for in a separate civil case. That money will go to former NutriMedic patients who never received any of the services promised and weren't satisfied. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
Because you see, I live in a world where people say, you can't do it honest. Don't give me that idealistic stuff about you're not going to cheat recruiting. Don't give me that stuff about you're going to educate these